I've been putting off talking about it all day because it's just such a hard, heavy topic, but I want to address the floods in Texas. At the point in time when I'm filming this, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday, July 5th, 43 people have been declared dead in floods in Texas as the Guadalupe River experienced dramatic flash flooding. A large number of those feared dead are little girls who were at a camp outside of Guadalupe called Camp Mystic. The Trump regime had a very delayed response to the news of this flooding. Typically, the President of the United States expresses his sadness, his condolences, his offers of help when there is a natural disaster and there is loss of life. But Trump kept spouting the same old on Truth Social for hours and hours and hours until there was public pressure, and he eventually did make a statement. And frankly, I was shocked that he did, because there have been a number of other natural disasters, flooding, tornadoes, all across the country, fires thus far this year, and Trump has declined to visit those folks, and he has actually withheld FEMA money from most of those natural disasters, saying that he thinks FEMA is bad and we should do away with it. He is currently gutting FEMA so that when communities experience the trauma, the loss of life, the destruction of natural disasters, Trump has said, it's up to the states to figure out how to deal with that. Just like he said, it's up to the states to figure out how to fund Medicaid. When the states are already struggling, tax revenue is down all over the country because Trump's chaotic plans have suppressed our economy and depressed the ability of Americans to earn money and pay tax. When Trump says, just let the states deal with it, he knows that these things will go unfunded. He knows that states cannot afford it. He knows the states that are the poorest are the ones with the greatest need for federal relief after disasters. Hurricane zones, Tornado Alley, flood zones, those are all Republican-controlled states. These folks are voting for Donald Trump, and they're going to suffer and die. They're going to have no relief from the devastation of natural disasters. And as if the callousness, the cruelty, the deprivation of the Trump regime, gutting FEMA, refusing to give aid after natural disasters to American citizens, and instead giving that money straight to the billionaires, if that weren't enough, Trump has also made big cuts to NOAA, and that means to the National Weather Service, the folks who forecast these disasters. Americans are not getting as much advanced warning, and that does convert to increased loss of life. More than a month before this disastrous flood in Texas, The Guardian had a piece entitled "Key U.S. Weather Monitoring Offices Understaffed as Hurricane Season Starts." The National Weather Service offices are reeling from job cuts and a hiring freeze imposed by Trump. It doesn't make sense to you and me why you would cut weather forecasters. These are the folks who predict our natural disasters so that we can stay safe. They predict and track hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding. Out on the West Coast, they predict lightning strikes and winds that make a huge difference when it comes to fighting wildfires. Y'all, hurricane season hasn't even gotten underway, and these offices have faced giant cuts across 13 regional weather offices throughout hurricane zones. Tom Fahey, who is the director of the National Weather Service's Employees Organization, said, "The system is already overstretched, and at some point it will snap. We are at the snapping point now." The folks who still remain after gutting the National Weather Service are trying really hard, y'all. They are working so hard. They know that lives are on the line. They know that the Trump regime doesn't care. Staff will put in a heroic effort, but there is a high probability of significant consequences because of cuts. If I were a citizen of Texas, Florida, or Georgia, I wouldn't be sure how well warned I would be of a hurricane. And if a hurricane was heading for a major city, I'm not confident that FEMA would be able to respond. We are looking at staffing being cut by more than a third in these offices that are in hurricane zones, including across Texas. And in fact, Texas officials had a response today after the flooding.
The original forecast that we received on Wednesday from the National Weather Service predicted 3 to 6 inches of rain in the Concho Valley and 4 to 8 inches of rain in the Hill Country. We worked with our own meteorologists to fine-tune that weather statement, and as many of you know, and many of you in broadcast journalism and meteorology, you can go back and look at your own forecast, and the amount of rain that fell in this specific location was never in any of those forecasts.
This rain event sat on top of that and dumped more rain than what was forecasted on both of those forks. When we got the report, it was about 7 feet or so on the South Fork, and within a matter of minutes it was up to 29 feet, and all of that converged at the Guadalupe, and that's where we saw those very quick rise in flood.
Listen, everybody got the forecast from the National Weather Service, right?
I have empathy for the folks in Texas who are suffering right now, for the people who are grieving the loss of potentially dozens of little children's lives in the wake of this flooding. But let's be very, very clear here. The National Weather Service did not mess up. The National Weather Service is not to blame for what happened. Donald Trump and Elon Musk are to blame. They are the ones who fired our NOAA, our National Weather Service workers. They are the ones who put a hiring freeze on new workers. They are the ones who created a situation that our weather forecasters have been telling us about for months, that they are massively understaffed, and this will result in people not being properly notified. There are not enough people to do the job. Quoting from the Texas Tribune from today, local and state officials were quick to point to weather forecasters that did not accurately predict the intensity of rainfall. I get that people are lashing out right now because they are sad, they are grieving, they are frustrated. I get that Texas officials are lashing out because they don't want to face responsibility for this. It's not their fault, but likewise, it is not the fault of the National Weather Service. It is the fault of Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the Republicans. When we see more Americans dying because they are not getting adequate notification, adequate warning in advance of these natural disasters, when we see more and more communities that are struggling, unable to recover from these disasters because there's no longer any FEMA funding, there's no federal support to help Americans recover in the wake of floods and tornadoes and hurricanes and wildfires. And to be clear here, we're not just talking about the flooding in the Hill Country today. We're not just talking about the tornado that ripped through St. Louis. We're not just talking about the floods in Kentucky and Arkansas that happened, in March and April. We're talking about hurricane season, which is just getting going. We're talking about wildfire season in the West, which has not started yet for this year. We have not even begun to see how much harm will be caused to towns and cities all across this country, how much loss of life there will be, because the Trump regime has gutted the systems that are supposed to care for the American people, that are supposed to protect us, warn us ahead of time, and help us recover after when there are disasters. The fault is not on the shoulders of our weather forecasters. The fault is not on the shoulders of the few people who work for FEMA who still remain. The fault is on Donald Trump's shoulders. None of this has to be happening. All of y'all who voted for Trump, please understand, none of this has to be happening. Is this what you voted for? Is this what you thought would be the greatness of America? More children dying in floods, towns unable to rebuild after tornadoes. All of that tax money that previously went to disaster relief now going straight into the pocket of Jeff Bezos, of Bill Gates, of Oprah Winfrey. I don't know about you, but I do not mind paying my taxes to go to take care of people who have lost their home in a flood. I don't mind paying my taxes to go to rebuild a school that was demolished in a hurricane. That's what our taxes should be funding. That is what a functional society and a functional government does. Our government is now in a complete state of dysfunction because Donald Trump is wrecking all of the things that we care about in order to fund his own private secret police, the American Gestapo, to the tune of $150 billion a year. Donald Trump is wrecking everything that makes this country functional in order to give a giant tax break, to take our tax money and funnel it straight into the pockets of billionaires, instead of going to the programs that keep us going, that help us, the American working class. That's the reality of the country that we have right now while Donald Trump is in charge. And I don't know about you, but I fail to see where there is any greatness in what is happening now.